Scott survived a lot. He survived jacked up assholes with flamethrowers. He survived criminals who've overtaken the police and have police-grade weaponry. He survived random rioters out there, armed with baseball bats, pistols, sometimes shotguns. And he's also survived mercenaries from the LMB, the Last Man Battalion. And he's even survived his own people, rogue agents, with better equipment than the LMB. I mean, next level battle technology. This place was questionable. It was full of magic and shit. That was something to take in. He didn't know what to think. I mean, there's so much to think about. There's so many new things. If you think about it long and hard, a man who's been put through so much, who's been put in a city infested with a flu, a deadly virus that caused everyone to turn against each other. And when you've been put through that, and then you come out, and then you have people who literally believe that the best way to survive is to kill each other, and now you put a man who's been trained for the very fall of his country and drop him into a place where magic conflicts with modern combat and modern tech, you get an interesting mix. Scott, to say the least, wasn't opposed nor threatened. He wasn't intimidated by the journey ahead of him. He had a stern, mean look on his face. Actually, never mind, he just had a stern, calm expression. He didn't really care. He'd been shot, he'd been stabbed, punched, put on fire, electrocuted. He'd been nearly blown up. He'd fallen. Many different things fell in line. Bottom line is he's been through hell. He's been in battle. He's seen a fair share after he was activated. Now, what his job is now to protect what remains, I'll tell you, here's his job. It's to wonder how the hell he's going to survive the rest of this. Scott had been walking for a decent amount of time, with him constantly running his pulse. Basically, it's a portable radar system. It detects any threats or any life signatures in the area. Plus, now that he has his map, he knows where he's going. He's heading to the closest place, a place called Ponyville. Scott isn't familiar with the landscape, so he's going to have to be careful. However, he was trained to maneuver through all terrain, be desert or be snow, be a forest or be grasslands, be jungle or be a swamp. He's been trained. Mountains or ocean, he's been trained. He's been through it all. That's because he's a specialist. The walk was uneventful, boring, yet peaceful. Scott had looked around from tree to tree, keeping his eyes sharp, constantly checking his pulse. As it would scan out, it would always scan 0 threats. His training was always there. He had whilst he had his pulse, his secondary equipment was a turret. This was because, in case things got crazy, he needed the extra help. He was one gun in a world of unreliability. See, if griffins and ponies were both sentient here, if they were both real and sentient, well, that could mean a lot of things. See, being as it is, they possess high intelligence and feelings and character. These ponies and griffins. There's no telling what else is out here. I mean, there could be a number of mythical creatures that are out here in the middle of nowhere. Which makes him think. He begins thinking of the most stupid shit. He thinks to all that nonsense he's been told. Sure, it was for fun, but, you know. I mean, what would that mean? Does that mean there's giant water serpents? Would that mean that there's gods and demons? He didn't know. He didn't know. As in this world there's magic, so he only has a handful of options. Isaac, we're approaching Ponyville. Keep that scan running. Affirmative. One enemy detected. It's what Isaac said. Immediately, Scott had gotten in position. He looked around and immediately saw a red area. He knew that Isaac was updating his inner virtual HUD, basically letting him know the direction and specific area where the threat was at. So what did he do? He switched his weapons out. Now running with a Vector and auto shotgun, he began gently and very quietly trenching through the brush, pushing forward, ready for what lied ahead. If it was a threat, he would have to eliminate it. His job is to protect what remains. Whilst brushing through the thick brush, and once he came to see it, he didn't know what the fuck to think. It was like a lion, but had a scorpion tail. He was at a loss for words. Whilst staring at this beast, he only had a handful of ideas how to approach this. Should he go complete combat? Probably for the best. So what he did do is he switched to a drone. It's better to get something in the air where that fucker can't reach. He switched to a drone and put it to an assault mode. Then he switched out to his seeker mine for a secondary piece of equipment. This one would explode. It wouldn't shoot fire. He didn't want to risk burning the forest around him. He then switched his primary to a scar. He was going to need some he's going to need some lead pumped in this thing. Didn't want to use an LMG. If he ran out, it'd take a while to reload. He needed to consider fast. If he was agile enough, the beast couldn't get him. He immediately assessed the situation. Isaac then pulled out the advantages and disadvantages of the battle that would lie ahead of him. The Scout's advantages was that he would be 10 times more agile and quicker. However, judging from Scott's smaller frame, if he received an injury, it could be fatal. Now, for the beast, its advantage was its tail, most definitely. Sure, it's definitely not going to have thick skin against bullets, but its tail was most definitely that alone. And secondly, its disadvantages. It was big, making it a big target. And also, it was much slower. Scott knew that this thing could be taken out. It posed a threat, especially to a nearby town. It might wander out and get hungry. So, Scott wasted no more time. He threw his drone up in the air as it flew up, and began hammering rounds out of its barrel right into the creature. Scott then threw his seeker mine on the ground. As it rolled, it immediately picked up the threat and began rolling. As the beast roared and growled in pain, it spotted its opposer. It immediately rammed its claws on the ground and yanked itself, charging at Scott. But the seeker mine did its job and blew up right in its face, causing it to stumble backwards, landing on its side. Before it could get up, however, Scott had ran over with shotgun in hand, and his drone still hammering rounds on it. Its stinger yanked out and rammed and very nearly rammed into Scott's side, but he immediately did a combat roll, evading to his right. Once he had completed the roll, with swiftness and great agility, he turned, firing about at least 5 rounds into the 10-round magazine, right into its face. The pellets teared through the skin, slamming through the flesh, tearing it apart. It was basically like taking a razor and ramming in a block of cheese. It wasn't easy, but with effort, you could get it in. He went up to it, and he reloaded his shotgun, putting it on his back. Pulling out his double barrel, the thing whimpered in pain. He raised it to its face and shot off both rounds, ending its life. He reloaded his sawed-off double barrel and began walking off to the town. He didn't want to risk it. Last time he had left an enemy to their bidding, showing mercy, he'd suffered dearly. 15 civilians lost their lives because of his action. He decided he wouldn't take an LMB patrol squad. He wouldn't kill them. And because of that, people suffered. People died. He vowed to never make that mistake again. He decided, he knew that they heard the gunshots. They'd likely come investigate. He decided it would be best not to approach the town now, but approach them when they were at a more, well, so to speak, well, whenever he was ready. He was tired and fatigued, and had been walking for 2 days. He would set up camp nearby, and approach when ready. It felt like hours. He'd set up camp, putting up a tent with a sleeping bag. Even pulled out a guitar. He'd been lugging it around, but he'd been happy he brought it. He'd been lugging it for a decent amount of time. And he decided he'd play a small tune. Anyway, sorry for the short chapter, guys, but tomorrow some spice is about to happen. I promise. It's going to be way better.